With this movie, I'd like to show you how to create a popular type effect here in Photoshop CS5, and that's how to apply an image inside of some text characters. I'm working with the sky1.jpg file, and this is a file that's available to you in your assets, so you can follow along with me. And the first thing I want to do is I want to copy this image from the background layer and place it on a new layer above a white background. So the first thing we need to do is to select everything in the image window. We'll choose Select All or press Command A on the Mac, Control A in Windows. We can see our marching ants now marching busily around the entire image. Next thing I want to do is cut this image area, place it on its own layer above a new white background. To do that, we can go under the Layer menu, choose New, and then Layer via Cut. And this is another keyboard shortcut you should memorize. Command-Shift-J or Control-Shift-J in Windows. You can see what happened over here in the Layers panel. We now have the image that we cut from the background and placed up on a new layer above. Okay, so let's double-click where it says Layer 1 in the Layers panel. Rename this Sky. Press Return or Enter to apply that name. The reason we have a white background is because it always defaults to the current background color in Photoshop. The default background color is always white. That's what we have here. You can see it down here at the bottom of the Tools panel. Alright, so we're ready to get started. Next thing I want to do is hide the sky layer for a moment. So we'll click on the visibility icon, and that's the eyeball over here on the left, next to the layer in the Layers panel. Turn off the sky layer. Select the background layer by clicking on it in the Layers panel. And now we want to add some text. Alright, so we're going to type some text inside of this document. To do that, we need to switch to the Type tool. So we'll press the T key on the keyboard or press the T icon over here in the Tools panel. If for some reason this icon is not what's to the forefront down here, if it's one of these guys, you can press Shift-T until you toggle to the Horizontal Type tool, or click down on it and select Horizontal Type tool from this flyout list. Alright, so we have the Horizontal Type tool. Now we want to select some formatting options up here in the Options panel. Currently we have Times chosen as the font, and I want to choose something else. So I'm going to type in the first few letters of the font I want to work with. H-E-L, here it is, Helvetica. Alright, except I want to choose Helvetica New. So I'm going to click and hold down on the list to select Helvetica New, and then I'm going to choose the font type. Keep in mind, this is all information that's stored within the font. Okay, so this is nothing that Photoshop's creating for us here. It's all relying on font information. All of these font styles are saved as part of the font family, and I'm going to choose Condensed Black. Now, if you're following along with me and you do not have Helvetica New, let's press Return or Enter to apply that, by the way. If you don't have Helvetica New Condensed Black, that is okay. You can use any sans serif thick, bold font, because we want something with thick characters in order to see the sky image inside of the text. So if you're working with skinny type, the effect just isn't going to work. Better to use a nice, big, thick font. I kind of like Helvetica New Condensed Black. If you don't have that, maybe you can try something else that's more common, maybe Futura Condensed Black or Arial Condensed Black, something along those lines. Alright, next thing we want to do is set our point size. It's way too small right now to see an image inside of. You have to think of this as like a type of picture frame, right? And 12 point is way too small. So I'm going to type in a much larger value, 188 point, press Return or Enter to apply that. Keep the anti-alias option at sharp. I'm also going to keep the alignment option at left. And I'm going to keep the color set to black. It doesn't really matter what color we use right now. We just need to see the text, because eventually we're going to clip this image inside of the characters. So the color doesn't matter, not at this moment. Alright, keep that to black. We'll click on this button here on the right in the Options panel, and that displays the Character panel. Some of these options are in here that we just already set in the Options panel, but there's a couple that aren't, and that's why we're going in here. First is this Auto Kerning option. Kerning is the space between the letters. Right now it's using Metrics Auto Kerning, which relies on the information stored in the font to determine the spacing. And sometimes that works well, sometimes it doesn't. I generally like to override that and use Optical Kerning, which allows Photoshop to decide the spacing between the kerning. It does a really nice job visually in most cases, so we're going to try it here. Next thing I want to do is change the scaling amount for both vertical and horizontal scaling. They're currently set to 100%, which means that no scaling is being applied. I want to expand the height of the letters by quite a bit. I'm going to type in 122%. We can press Tab to go to the next field. That's the horizontal scaling, and in here, I'm going to shrink it down. We're going to condense it to 85%. Okay, Tab again. That takes us to baseline shift, although we're going to leave that at 0. Last thing I want to do is click on this button here, and that's going to make it all caps. All right? We're going to close up the character panel. Those are all of the formatting options I want to apply to this text. We have everything set up. Now I'm going to click over here on the left of the window, and when I do, you can see my very large flashing cursor. Photoshop has automatically added this type layer above the background layer, but underneath the sky layer, which is exactly where I want it. Okay? Next thing we can do is start typing, and I'm going to press D, R, E, A, and M, or spell the word dream, which I think goes well visually with the sky image. Okay? And let's go ahead and switch to the move tool, because that looks pretty good to me. I just want to reposition this now in the center of my document. I'm just kind of eyeballing this. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Move it over a little bit. So we have our word, dream, in all caps. If we wanted to, we could go back in here with the type tool. We could place the cursor in between some letters, maybe do a little bit of manual kerning. To do that, you can hold down the Option key or the Alt key in Windows. Press the left arrow key to tighten things up where you think it needs it. Maybe don't like it there. Just looked like the D and the R were not quite right. They had a little bit too much space. So I'm fixing that up a little bit with some manual kerning. All right, next thing I want to do is turn on the sky layer. We'll click that visibility icon again. And when we do, we're covering up the text. Okay? Well, that's not going to do us any good. What we want to do is put the text inside of the characters. And the way to do that is to create a clipping mask. All right? Very, very easy to do. And this is the easiest way to do it. And that's to hold down the Option key or the Alt key in Windows. When you do, hover your cursor in between the two layers that you want to group together. Notice what happens to the cursor? We have this strange icon with these two circles overlapping and a little arrow. What that means is if we click on the line that's in between these two layers, we can create a clipping mask. So let's go ahead and click, and we now have a clipping mask. We have the image inside of the text. Right now, this is a very, very good way to work because it's completely non-destructive. All right? We can switch to the Move tool, select the sky layer if we want, and change the crop just by dragging the image around inside of our text frame, right? Change the way the clouds appear inside the letters until we find a crop that we like. Okay, no pixels harmed here. This is amazing that we're doing this. We're working with a vector mask, essentially, which is what this type layer is. And we're working with a pixel layer, transparent pixel layer, that we can move around inside of this clipping mask. Great way to work. Another thing we can do, if we wanted to, if we needed to, is we could edit the text. We can go back in here with the type tool. We can select something. Let's say we misspelled this. Maybe the company that's wanting us to create this graphic for them actually uses an intentional misspelling of the word dream. We could put two E's instead of D-R-E-A-M, which is the proper spelling. Maybe it's a company name, and this is the way they choose to spell dream. Okay, so you can edit the text, is my point here, on the fly, and it maintains this mask, this vector clipping mask. Great way to work. I'll undo that because I like the proper spelling. I think it looks nicer. But just to illustrate a point, I want to show you that you could edit the text on the fly. All right, so that is basically how you can place an image inside of some text non-destructively. Let's recap what we did here. We took a background layer. We cut the image layer to a new layer above the background, and then created a text layer above the background using the type tool. We set up all of our formatting options, typed in our text, did a little bit of manual kerning until it looked the way we wanted, made sure that that text layer was in between the image layer and the white background, and then created a vector clipping mask by Option clicking or Alt clicking between the layers. All right? One last thing, if you wanted to undo this, Option or Alt click again, and you release the clipping mask. Okay, reapply it, do the same thing, Option or Alt click between the layers.